Hi, I'm going to show you how to web a quilt. I tried to write directions for this, but it was really hard, and I figured the best way to show you is to actually show you in a video. So I've got my quilt laid out exactly how I want it sewn together. And I don't know if you realize, but it happens to me all the time. When I go to sew it together, they all get mixed up. By webbing it, it stays in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this laid out in columns and rows. So I'm going to take my second column and I'm going to fold it over my first, like so. You can do it one at a time if you want, but I like to save time and do both two together. If I had a third arm, I'd do three. And then I gather it up from the top, gather the pairs up like so. And I put a pin on the side that I'm going to sew on. I find that if I don't put the pin there and I need to go to the bathroom, I come back and I end up sewing the wrong side. So I know this is the side I'm going to sew on. So I'm going to take all this over to the sewing machine. I take my pin out now, and I'm going to take the top two squares and sew them together. The key is do not break your thread. Here is the second two squares. And the next two. And remember, do not break your thread. I'm going to carry on sewing these two rows together, and I'll be right back. Okay, here's my two rows all sewn together. And I'm just going to lay them out here. And I'm going to flip the first row back over. Now, the next step is really important. This prevents everything from getting tangled as you sew further rows on. And so you just take the first one and the second one and just pin them together. Doesn't matter which way you pin them, just pin them together and it will hold them in place. And it will prevent the rest of it from getting all tangled up. Okay, now I'm ready to add my third row on. So I'm going to gather it from the top. And again, I'm going to put a pin on this side so I remember which way it gets sewn on to the first two. So I'm going to take the two of them over to my sewing machine. I don't worry about the rest of it hanging down. And I take my first block, put it on top of this one, and I start sewing. Okay. I'm just going to leave this here, and I'm going to gather my next row. And I'm just going to pull it closer to me. So from the top to the bottom, if you notice, I haven't broken my thread except for the end of each row. And I pin on the side that it's going to go onto the pieces before. Now I've got half the quilt webbed together, and I'm just going to continue in the same manner and finish doing it. Okay, it's all webbed together, and yeah, there's holes in it, but that's okay, we'll take care of those shortly. Now the next thing you can do is the pins on the edge, you can just remove them. And now you're going to start to press. And one of the joys of this, webbing it together, is we're going to press the seams in one direction on one row. So I'm pressing them all over to the right here. So the seams are going to go all to the right on your first row, and your second row they're going to go to the left. And the reason to do them in opposite directions is when I go to sew the rows together down here, the seams will nest nicely together. And so iron this next row to the right. And I will carry on and iron the rest of the rows in opposite directions. Here it is, all webbed together, sewn together, and pressed and ready for the borders. And that's it. Hope you learned how to web a quilt.